somebody who does an amazing job on AXS TV every Friday evening with our good friend Jim Ross at 8 p.m., and he's going to be a big part of the G1 special in San Francisco at the Cow Palace on July 7th. It's the one and only Josh Barnett. Josh, welcome to Busted Open, man.
Nice to be back.
Yeah, it's good to have you back on. And, man, since we had you on last, the growth of New Japan in the States has been amazing, and I can't wait for what's going to happen at the Cow Palace on July 7th.
Yeah, it's continued to climb. It's been on an upswing in a lot of different ways. The live shows have been a great success, and this is the biggest and most expansive show to date. So, onward and upward.
And Josh, were you surprised? I mean, because what the shows that we've seen on the West Coast have been in smaller venues, 2,000-3,000 seats, but the Cow Palace, that's a very big building. Were you surprised that they made that big of a jump?
Yeah, and while San Francisco is still in California, the West Coast, where I think we're probably strongest on the West Coast, most likely, and if not there, then I would think, the other coast.
Yeah.
Somewhere out in one of the major metropolitan cities. And it's smart to stick with that and then try to expand out from there. But I really think that Southern California is probably a stronger base of operations, I think, for New Japan Pro Wrestling. So I was a bit surprised to head up to San Francisco, but I'm glad for us to bring New Japan Pro Wrestling to San Francisco and try to expand that market as much as possible and bring this live show to all those fans up there. And, for all the guys and gals that drove down to see us in Long Beach on both occasions, now it's our turn, I guess, in LA to have to drive up there.
Josh, was it always a dream of yours to announce and call fights as well as good a competitor as you were? Did you ever think about getting behind the microphone when you were competing?
No, it was not something that I had any real plans for. I don't mind running my mouth, but I tend to get a bit, acerbic and weird and sarcastic, and often surreal with what I have to say, which doesn't necessarily work all that great for commentary. Not to say that there haven't been some very whip crack, smart and quick commentators like Bobby the Brain Heenan just immediately sticks out. But when I watch fights, combat sports, to me, I don't really. As much as I've always got some sort of weird line running through my head at all times, I really don't want to bring that kind of element too much into the product, no matter whether it was MMA or pro wrestling, because I feel like there's enough people out there that aren't treating the job of being a commentator seriously enough, which is, I always recognize it as being a lot harder than people thought. But also that people don't, especially with pro wrestling, I don't feel like they give it the respect that it deserves. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if they undermine the product and treat it in a way without legitimacy, it just makes it harder for what the guys are doing in the ring to be respected. And you need what you're doing to be respected or over, so to speak, so that when you do it, it counts and it makes people care and matter. Like I heard recently that there was a match in WWE. A gal gets the other gal and is working her ribs over, puts her in a bear hug, and then the announcer goes, "Oh man, what a break for this person to be put into a bear hug right now to rest." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Did you just say that this person is getting a rest and being in a bear hug? That destroys all the credibility of everything up to that point and everything happening at the moment."
You come across as a fan calling sometimes. I don't think it's you running your mouth. I think it's great insight from somebody that's a fan as well as an announcer. Jonathan Coachman and Michael Cole going at each other about that bear hug, saying that it was a rest, was, I thought, and like, great. I'm glad he called him on it, because he was basically saying, what are you talking about? Like, that's the ignorantest thing I ever heard in my life. And it sounded like two fans talking rather than two polished announcers. And sometimes, like, I admire the fact that you and Jim Ross go back and forth and y'all talk as fans as well as seasoned announcers.
Well, we love it. We absolutely love professional wrestling. The roots of my MMA career is steeped in professional wrestling. I come from the Japanese shoot wrestling lineage from Carl Gotch and Billy Robinson and Antonio Inoki and down that line. And so, to me, pro wrestling, working and shooting is the same coin, just different sides. And, I'm really proud of and really respectful of the heritage of professional wrestling, where it came from as a shoot competition into what it is now, and all those variants throughout the years and all the athletes that have come through it. And as an MMA guy, and then as a worker too, and as a worker, I got broke in New Japan on the road, training with guys like Jushin Thunder Liger and Yuji Nagata every day, and then being even carried under the wing by folks like Mike Barton and Perry Saturn and Christopher Daniels, and I've had such a wonderful opportunity to get to learn from so many different people and so many different styles. And when I go out there and I see wrestling, and not everything can go the way you want to, and with the really detailed ways of shooting wrestling now, everything being in HD and the close-ups and the slow-mos, I mean, there's times where you see something that's a mistake, perhaps. So instead of leaving these guys out there on a limb to die on that, it's like, well, it's a real fight. Let's say not everything can be perfect all the time, and it doesn't always have to be smooth, and protect the wrestlers. And then even Jim and I may have some big disagreements from our perspective, and sometimes about some of the work rate on some of these matches, some of the moves they're pulling off that don't get finishes, right? That's a philosophical position on terms of putting together a match. But even still, I want to try and still save the wrestlers as this happens. I mean, if you're giving somebody some big avalanche powerbomb off the top rope and people are kicking out, I want to give them a reason why that didn't kill them and finish them, so nobody looks like they're weak at all or that they're inefficient or incapable. And it's like, it took so much effort to pick that guy up out of that power bomb. He wasn't able to set get a leg over his shoulder, and therefore that shoulder was free enough to kick out. Not your power bomb ain't good enough. Not
wow.
You're not. Yeah, I want to try and make these wrestlers always seem like everything they're doing makes sense. Or even when they do something, let's say in a match, and I look at it and I'm just thinking, that is the absolute wrong thing to do right now. That's not what you would do if you're legitimately trying to win. But I'll say, I'll save someone as best as I can and say, he's just taken over with emotion right now, and he just feels like it's so close, and he's done so much and still has yet to have gotten a pinfall. So perhaps he felt like he needed to take it to a not just another level, but 10 levels above, and he went so big that when it backfired, it was a mistake, and it cost him. And I want to protect all these guys to make them seem that if at any moment either one could be the victor, that nobody has to go down looking bad, and that everybody can look as strong as possible.
Sounds a little like what Gordon Soley used to do. You mentioned Antonio Inoki just a little while ago, and the last question from me, it's on this date back in 1976 that you had that Antonio Inoki Muhammad Ali matchup in Tokyo, Japan, and the MMA world has really come into the world of pro wrestling. Bobby Lashley coming back, Ronda Rousey. What do you think of that marriage between pro wrestling and MMA in 2018?
Well, I mean, it's a natural thing to me, but it still depends on the athletes. Like, there's a million strength athletes out there, but that doesn't mean they can be Mark Henry and be able to forge a pro wrestling career.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a certain athlete and a certain personality. There's a lot of guys that are shooters that are just like, oh yeah, I'll just pro wrestle, or I want to pro wrestle. It's like, yeah, well, okay, great, but it's not a joke. It's not something that just anyone can do, and it's a lot more difficult than you think. Don't look at it as fake fighting and therefore some sort of easy, some sort of yellow brick road for the rest of your career where you won't have to work hard anymore. And it's like, that's absolutely not the case. And by the way, funny you bring up Gordon Soley, because that has always been one of my commentating idols as far as someone to pattern myself after.
Him and Jim Ross are the two greatest of all time.
And and then Jim Ross as well too.
Yep.
So it's been a real pleasure to work with Jim, and a really sometimes even as years into it, I'll just sit there and be like, God damn, I'm working with Jim Ross right now, and he's feeding me to help me be a better commentator. He's weaning me here in this booth, and it's like, well, this is incredible. I never thought I'd be in this position, but
so cool.
I think that shoot fighters going to, if they're the right athlete, it's great for them to be in MMA. I took one of my longtime students, Shayna Baszler, and just one day I was just simply good, hey, I know you're really into wrestling. Would you like to give it a try? She said, yeah. And so, carrying that Billy Robinson, Carl Gotch lineage, I trained her the same way I was trained, and built her from the ground up as a pro wrestler, and now she's off. She's the NXT Women's Champion, and one of the key things I had to tell her, which is a benefit to someone who's a known shooter, is that, look, do less. Everything you do is over. If you punch someone, everyone believes it. If you just put a simple hold on them, everyone believes it. No one has to be convinced that you are legitimately tough. And if you try to do too much and overcompensate and do the most over-the-top stuff all the time, it will make you seem illegitimate, if anything.
Yep.
Start small and work up from there, because you don't have to try. You don't have to do crazy moves to make people believe that you can smash someone. If all you did was walk out there and just start punching them and then they were done, everyone would believe it.
And Shayna Baszler right now is doing a tremendous job. You can hear him every Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern with Hall of Famer, and yes, one of the greatest voices in the history of the sport, Jim Ross, on AXS TV. And, of course, Saturday, July 7th, G1 special in San Francisco at the Cow Palace. Tickets still available. Josh, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today.
It's been great.